A little girl? How do you forget a little girl?
I need you to be with her because I need to know if she's breathing. I need to know now. It doesn't seem like it.
Did you trust your mom?
No.
No.
You can forget this baby's in a car. You can do that.
Who could be so forgetful as to let two grandbabies die on their watch? Well, that is the question the defendant herself asked out loud. This morning, we're getting back into court for the hot car death case of Tracey Nix. And basketball superstar Caitlin Clark allegedly being terrorized by a stalker. We're watching the unexpected moment in court when he yells, "Guilty as charged." Also this hour, Jennifer Crumbley's attorney is joining us live. He's claiming that prosecutors used thousands in taxpayer dollars to fund what he calls a smear campaign against the Oxford school shooter's parents. Plus, Donna Adelson's defense team are now using the release of documents about their son Robert to request a change of venue for her trial. So will it work? It's all coming up next for you right here on Opening Statements. Good Wednesday morning to you. Welcome to Opening Statements. I'm your host, Julie Grant. Here's the question for you. Are you ready for some coffee and some court? It is that time. Let's get it going. Go ahead, grab that cup of coffee right now. It's time for my opening statement. It's like lightning striking the same place twice. What are the odds? It's nearly impossible, right? So what are the odds that two of Tracey Nix's grandchildren die in her care? How in the world does that happen? What's more, she was a principal. She devoted her whole career to the betterment of children. She was a loving grandmother by all accounts and a woman of faith. So back to my question, how does this happen twice? Baby Ezra and baby Yuri deserved far better. Those babies were helpless. They were entirely dependent on their grandma to take the very best care of them. And after Ezra tragically dies, you would think that Grandma Tracey would have been hyper vigilant in taking care of her other grandchildren. That deadly mistake being top of mind for her with every move she makes, right? But clearly it wasn't. But why? Why not? My friends, my heart, like yours, goes out to baby Yuri and baby Ezra's parents as they have suffered unimaginable losses. Because to bury one baby is beyond tragic, but to bury two babies is unfathomable. Like I said, it's like lightning striking the same place twice. That's my opening statement. Let me know if you like it. Right now, it's time for your daily docket.
Originally, he became a potential person of interest at the beginning when I was brought into the investigation, just due to the fact that we had a missing persons under suspicious circumstances, and it is extremely uncommon with my experience as a law enforcement investigator that a significant other not be a part of the process in attempting to locate that missing person.
In Tennessee, we've got testimony resuming in the murder trial of Jason Chen. That begins at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. In West Virginia, we've got a brand new trial here on Court TV. Did a Ponzi scheme lead to murder? Well, that's going to be the question for the jury as wife Natalie Cochran is accused of murdering her husband. Opening statements in that case start up at 9 a.m. Eastern as well. And then in Florida, we've got testimony continuing in the case I was just talking about, the Forgetful grandma case with defendant Tracey Nix. She's accused in her granddaughter's hot car death. That one's going to start up earlier than the other two. That one starts at 8:30 a.m. Eastern. At least it's slated to. We'll go in there live when it begins. And that is, of course, our top story for you this morning here on Opening Statements. Because sadly, as I said, this is not the first time a grandchild has died on Tracey Nix's watch. Now, the jury isn't allowed to know about this, but in 2021, less than a year before 7-month-old Uriel was killed, her 16-month-old brother Ezra was killed. He drowned in a pond while Grandma Tracey was watching him, but apparently she was asleep, and he went outside and drowned in the pond. Now, police attempted to pursue charges in Ezra's death at the time, but the state attorney's office is who was declining to bring those charges. Now, the judge has ruled that Ezra's death will not be mentioned during this current trial. So the jury has no idea, because that would be so prejudicial and so inflammatory and so unfair. But we know about it, and that's why we're asking the questions, why? Did you see when baby Yuri's mother, and remember, she's also the defendant's daughter, Kayla Nix, took the stand and told the jury about the day of the incident?
And you said you had to identify Yuri?
Yes, I did.
And you saw her?
I was not with my husband in that moment, and so as soon as we found each other in that parking lot, which was sheer insanity, then we went in together to look at our daughter and identify her body.
On the day baby Yuri died, Tracey Nix told a detective that after she drove home from having lunch with her girlfriends, she just forgot about the baby in the backseat. It wasn't until one of her grandsons arrived at the home that she remembered baby Yuri had been in the car all afternoon, and temperatures that day reached as high as 90 degrees. That baby suffered tremendously, as you can imagine. Let's bring in our guests. I have two great guests lined up to dig into this case with me. I want to welcome in the studio criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor. I call him Noah Pine. Zaki gets those null process for his clients. Good morning, Noah. And joining us remotely, psychology expert, author, and she's really an expert in families and relationships. She's written all about it and does coaching on it. Dr. Sue Kornbluth. Good morning to you both. Okay, so Noah, let me start with you with one of the legal aspects of this that has so many of our courties asking, why wasn't she charged the first time? Curious to get your thoughts on that.
Well, obviously the state, the prosecutor, believed that there was not enough evidence to prove that she committed a crime. Now, you know, what kind of crime could be committed? She intentionally did it, which apparently there's no evidence of, or like this case, there was a criminal negligence, which is not just negligence, it's a little bit more.
Right.
I mean,
right.
Leaving a kid in the back of your car is negligent. It's you owe a duty and the child is harmed because of that duty and you breached the duty. The question becomes, is it criminal?
Mm-hmm. Right, Noah. You know, and now, of course, hindsight's 20/20, but certainly you have to wonder if those prosecutors are going, oh my gosh, should we have looked more carefully at this the first time? Should we have passed on the charging? Kind of makes you wonder. I have a clip I want to play for both of you. And Dr. Sue, I want to come to you on the other side of this. This is body camera footage. And in the courtroom, you just hear the audio, but it is really compelling. This is when the police officer is talking with Tracey Nix, and she's realizing exactly what she's done. Let's watch.
Who can do that? Who can do that? Who does that? What do you mean? Who can forget that baby's in a car? Who can do that?
Okay, so those are her words. Dr. Sue, looking at this psychologically, everybody's wondering what in the world is wrong with this grandma. We know you haven't personally evaluated her, however, we would love if you could. But tell us your thoughts from afar, please.
Yeah, Julie, this is a very complicated case in many ways. And we do know that she did have the same problem with her first grandchild. And now here we are again with another one. You know, I think this woman has some serious problems in terms of distractions. And there's something known as forgotten baby syndrome, okay? This is a real thing that does happen. And what begins to happen is that you become so distracted, or your mind goes back to habits of you're in your car by yourself and you get out and you don't have a baby in the back seat. However, for me, in this case, as you said in your opening statement, how could she not be more hypervigilant about what is going on with her grandchild after what happened the second time? So to me, is this a coincidence? I don't know. Did she do it on purpose? I don't know that either. 2 times, there's something here that I believe is not right entirely with this woman and her mental health. I also am concerned to why, and I'm not blaming the parents here, but knowing that this happened the first time, what made you put your child in the care of her the second time?
Great question, Dr.
Yeah.
Sue. A fair question that so many of our courties have been asking, so thank you for raising that. Noah, thinking about what Dr. Sue just shared with us, and I wrote it down so I wouldn't forget it, Dr. Sue, as you said, forgotten baby syndrome, something I've never heard of, and I'm wondering, Noah, what do you do if you're Tracey Nix's defense counsel? Do you get an expert like Dr. Sue Kornbluth to come in and try to explain this syndrome?
Well, I mean, that could be risky because if you open the door, then maybe that evidence of the other child does come in. And, you know, I don't know exactly, obviously it's very prejudicial, which is probably why it was kept out. But you can't open the door to letting it come in because that's an easy thing to do in a case like this. And even if she testifies, you know, her lawyers will keep her on a very, very narrow track because anything she says would then allow the state to probably get around that judge's ruling.
That's an excellent point, Noah. So they've got to walk the line. They asked for something to be excluded. They got a victory. And so I see what you're saying. They could potentially open the door to
so
what I
easy
like
to
to call
open the
the
door.
fairness dance, you know, where
Yeah.
the prosecutors will say, well, in all fairness, you brought it up. So now we get to rebut. Great point. Dr. Sue, I want to go back to one of the points you raised when we think about the parents, and to echo your sentiments, I said this yesterday, I'll say it again, I'm not in any way blaming the parents. When you think about the position Kayla Nix is in, this is her mother she's trusting, right? One of the people we trust most in the world, right? You know, our mother, our father, our parents. And so here she's talking with her husband to a local reporter. And my understanding is this interview was done after both babies had been deceased. And let's listen together to the answer she gives about trusting Tracey Nix.
After the death of
Ezra.
your son, did you trust your mom?
No,
we didn't trust her at all.
I thought that if I could believe in second chances, and so when I was told that Ezra's death was an accident, some sliver child part of me thought, okay, good, I get to keep this mom, this grandmother, this person.
Dr. Sue, what'd you think of that answer?
I mean, I think it's right on. She didn't trust her mother. I mean, we all want to believe that we can trust our parents to do the right things, but sometimes they don't. And I wonder, Julie, if there is any history of mental illness with her mother that we don't know about. And I think that is something that needs to be explored here. If she's had any problems before in her own history of taking care of others or taking care of her own daughter growing up. And I think that's something that we need to look at with Tracey to see if there is a pattern here. I know my heart is just breaking for this mother. I mean, what else can you say about this? But I suspect there is some neglect or negligence that has gone on way before it happened with the grandchildren.
That's a great point. And let's end on that point. Noah Pines, tell me, if you're representing Tracey Nix, what might you do to try to uncover any mental health struggles, if there are any?
Well, I mean, you would have already done that, right? You might have already had her evaluated by an expert and gotten that information. And if they haven't disclosed it, it's probably not going to happen. But that clip by the mom is dangerous too, because here where I practice in the state of Georgia, that could get her charged with cruelty to children in the second degree for being criminal negligent, for allowing the mom to supervise the child, which then resulted in the death. And we see that a lot in cases now in Georgia where the other spouse is being charged for the conduct of the person who's committing the crime against a child. So that's saying I didn't trust her is not something I would have had her admit.
That's great insight, Noah. You know, and thinking about you always need a lawyer. This is why, like, my dad would always say to me, he loved the idea of me becoming a lawyer when I was thinking about it. And he said, everybody always needs a lawyer, because if she had one at the time, and we're not faulting her for not, the lawyer might have guided her in that conversation with the reporter. But again, our hearts go out to this family. And Noah and Dr. Sue, you both are staying with us for more analysis. We thank you kindly for that. My friends, I want to show you a live look at the courtroom as Tracey Nix has just made her way in. So there she is. If you didn't see the trial yesterday, that is her with the glasses, the short haircut and the flowered blouse, with her head down. She looked very somber yesterday. We see a little bit of a smile as she's greeting her attorney. Really, her attorney is going to be her, I mean, her lifesaver at this point, right? Her lifeline. I mean, everything is riding on this. And it is a very close relationship that clients can develop, with their lawyers, because their lawyers are their advocates. And they're working on advocating their way out of a really difficult, tragic situation, as you know, my friends. We'll go into the courtroom when proceedings begin. Up next here on Opening Statements.
I've also learned to never think this could not happen to you, and stereotype that bad kids come from bad parents. The prosecution has tried to mold us into the type of parents society wants to believe are so horrible only a school or mass shooter could be bred from.
The mother of the Oxford High School shooter is claiming prosecutorial misconduct. Jennifer Crumbley's attorney joins us live to explain. But first, basketball star Caitlin Clark's alleged stalker became disruptive in his first court appearance. We'll show you the strange moment that was all caught on camera.
A Ponzi scheme and a deadly poisoning.
A former pharmacist already convicted in a federal fraud case
Now stands trial for the murder of her husband.
The financial crime gives rise to motive.
Did Natalie Cochran kill to cover up other crimes?
We're not here to obtain convictions. We're here to obtain the truth.
Now a jury will decide her fate, and Court TV will bring you every minute.
The Ponzi scheme murder trial. Live coverage today, only on Court TV.
Life-changing, maybe?
That's a great one. I think that's
all in a good way. Things just change really fast, as you guys know. That's just how the world works, and especially with social media, people see a lot of your life, but that's what makes it fun and why I've had so many cool opportunities, too.
Caitlin Clark's first season as a professional basketball player has opened many doors for her. But the dark side to that fame is what's trending in true crime this morning, as a 55-year-old man has been charged with felony stalking of the WNBA Rookie of the Year. His name is Michael Thomas Lewis. He's accused of repeated and continued harassment of the 22-year-old since back in December. Now, one day after he was charged, this is how Lewis entered his first court appearance. Take a look.
Morning, Mr. Lewis.
Guilty as
No, sir.
Did you hear that? Now, he reportedly behaved very erratically in that appearance while noting that he had not been taking his meds while he's been in custody. He's being held on a $50,000 bond, but the court did not file a not guilty plea on his behalf. The court did file a not, okay, I'm sorry, I am having trouble seeing this morning. Okay, so really only the defendant can enter a plea of not guilty. Might have been his attorney who entered that plea on his behalf, but you heard him say guilty as charged. So let's talk about this. How does he say, I'm guilty as charged? First words out of his mouth, but then apparently the court record reflects a not guilty plea for this guy. Let's bring in our guests. Got a great power panel. Still with me, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor Noah Pines, also family and relationship expert, author, psychologist, Dr. Sue Kornbluth, and want to welcome in criminal defense attorney and civil rights attorney, Kesia Early. Good morning to you all. Kesia, let me start with you. Would you talk to us a little bit about this contradiction, please?
Yeah, that was some entrance, right? Guilty as charged. So basically, everyone is innocent until proven guilty, as you know. And unless the court certifies and formally accepts that guilty plea, that's just his admission, but it has not been accepted by the court. So as you stated, the attorney on his behalf entered a not guilty plea. And I do suspect that some evaluation will be conducted. I do believe that there was some consideration, considering he was not consistently on his medication and he was not in the right state of mind. And that's something that the court also has to consider when they're doing a plea colloquy, is whether or not the defendant in the case is on drugs, alcohol, or in the right state of mind for it to be entered in valid. So in this case, I do believe that he can say guilty as charged, but has not been accepted by the court.
Casey, thank you so much for that. I've got some more information about him I want to share with you all. According to the Associated Press, in one post on Twitter or X, Lewis said he had been repeatedly driving by Gainbridge Fieldhouse, the Indiana Pacers' home arena, where the Fever also play. In another post, he said he had one foot on a banana peel and the other on a stalking charge. Other messages directed at Caitlin Clark were quite sexually explicit. Dr. Sue Kornbluth, to you next, please. What do you think of this guy?
So, Julie, I think I'm thinking what everybody else is thinking. He either has mental health issues, which usually in these stalking cases, okay, that it can range from schizophrenia, delusional disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, and addictions. If you look at him in the court and how he answered that question, lock me up, that's just bizarre nature in responding to something. Maybe he's happy in jail. I don't know. He gets 3 meals a day and a cot to sleep in. Who knows? But this reminds me of somebody that has mental health issues, and he seems to me to be a rejected, obsessive predator, and that is scary to anyone. And I can see how this is scary to Caitlin Clark. And another thing to look at, which in an evaluation would be to look at his attachment styles growing up, because that can lead somebody to be obsessive, feel extreme rejection and resentment. That is why they go after and stalk other human beings.
This is really helpful insight, Dr. Sue. Thank you. Noah Pines, let me ask you this. How do you see this case playing out?
The first thing his lawyer will do is file a request for an examination, a mental examination, to get him evaluated, to find out the records. Has he been in trouble before? Has he had mental health before? What's his educational background? Did he have probably back then they didn't do individual education plans. All that information needs to be gathered. And the great thing about our criminal justice system is that we do have a process, due process. And instead of a judge in another country going, oh, you said you're guilty, you're going to prison now, guilty pleas have to be freely and knowingly and voluntarily given, which means you have to understand your rights, you have to understand what you're charged with. Clearly, he just came in and is just saying guilty, but that doesn't mean, as everyone else has said, that it's a true, valid guilty plea in the United States of America.
Noah, thank you. A great explainer there. So now let's turn to some other trending news together. Family members of a missing mother of 2 are a little nervous as police are searching a local landfill. On Tuesday, investigators returned to a landfill near Detroit to continue their search for signs of 30-year-old Ashley Elkins. The mother and hairstylist went missing on January 2nd after she was running some errands. Her ex-boyfriend, this guy, DeAndre Booker, has been charged so far with lying to police about details relating to the case. And prosecutors are saying that Booker looked up how to delete his Google search history, which included the fastest routes to Ohio. This according to Fox 2 Detroit. While speaking to the media, Ashley's mother described a shocking attempt by Booker to see her daughter days before she disappeared.
I knew that he had been there 2 days prior, acting like he was a client. He went on her website and booked an appointment to get his hair done, and then he came to her house. He knocked on the front door and the side door, and they didn't let him in. So here he is 2-3 days later, boom, she's gone.
All right, Ashley Elkins is the missing person here. Let's talk about whether we think any evidence is going to land the boyfriend with some more charges. Noah Pines, I'll start with you this time, please.
Well, that making the appointment is kind of a weird behavior, right? That means obviously that he's trying to see her, she doesn't want to see him. That and the Google search, if accurate, would be definitely some circumstantial evidence, but you always need a little bit more than that. And I don't know if the police have it at this point.
Thank you, Noah. Thank you. Dr. Sue, let me go to you next, please. Are you suspicious of the boyfriend?
Yes, very suspicious of what has gone on here. You know, I think that I read, Julie, that he changed his name a couple times to see her. So right then and there, that tells me that this is, you know, not kosher in terms of what is going on here. It reminds me of a stalking case, as we just talked about before, when you can't get to somebody and you have rejection feelings, you become obsessed oftentimes. And I believe that's what's going on here. He couldn't get to her, and he had to get to her to release the anxiety that he was feeling inside, and possibly he didn't want anybody else having her, so he murdered her.
Right, Dr. Sue. Yeah, you know, he, one of the reports I saw from WXYZ, and again, we're relying on local reporting, that, as you said, the fake name, that he scheduled the hair appointment under the fake name so as not to raise a flag, you know, for her with him coming to his business. So that tells me he's unwanted if he's got to book it under a fake name to get there. Currently being held without any bail. Thank goodness for that, I say. Casey Early, would you take us home on this case? Tell us what you foresee for Mr. Booker, please.
Well, it's always highly problematic when a mother goes missing if there's no previous abuse or neglect of the children. So then you look at the ex-boyfriend in this case, and I do believe that the digital evidence is going to secure a conviction simply because of what he did. Those are red flags, trying to hide his identity, and also him being the ex and no longer wanted by her. So I do believe that he is the only person capable of committing this crime.
Right, right. I'm with you. From what we've seen in the local reporting, police have said they believe there's a strong possibility there was foul play here. How we hope and pray Ashley Elkins is alive and well somewhere. We're keeping the family members, her two children, in our hearts and on our minds as that search continues. My understanding it's going to continue until they're done with that landfill. We've got to leave it here for now, but we'll continue following that case. Dr. Sue Kornbluth, I know I've got to say goodbye to you. Thank you for your time and expertise. We'll keep in mind forgotten baby syndrome as we go into court in Florida this morning. Thank you so much for that. Noah and Casey are coming along with us and want you to do the same at home, please. When we come back, we're talking about the mother of the Oxford High School shooter and her latest accusation that prosecutors have smeared her name. Jennifer Crumbley's defense attorney joins us live next. Plus, Donna Adelson trying to get her upcoming murder trial moved out of town.
When did they issue a warrant?
So what happened is we have to take you to our warrants room for that information to get entered, and then after that gets entered, before we can take you to the jail, to the local jail.
Okay, because I didn't know there was a warrant. How would I know that?
Welcome back to Opening Statements. I'm Julie Grant. This morning, we're spotlighting serious allegations of prosecutorial misconduct coming from defendant Jennifer Crumbley, the mother of Oxford school shooter Ethan Crumbley. Now, her defense attorney, Michael Desi, claims that the prosecution conducted what he calls a smear campaign to influence public opinion ahead of Jennifer Crumbley's trial. Desi alleges that the prosecution spent over $100,000 on public relations firms to manage the narrative surrounding the case. He argues this behavior has undermined Crumbley's right to a fair trial, highlighting concerns over secret deals with key witnesses that weren't disclosed, he says, during the proceedings. Now, Jennifer and James Crumbley, you may recall, were both convicted of involuntary manslaughter for their role in the deaths of 4 Oxford high school students.
Of course, I look back after this all happened, and I've asked myself if I would have done anything differently, and I wouldn't have.
If you could change what happened, would you?
Oh, absolutely. I wish he would have killed us instead.
We all remember that moment, right? Well, Jennifer Crumbley is currently appealing her conviction, asking the court to release her too, while her appeal is pending. She's scheduled to be back in court on January 31st. I want to welcome now her attorney onto the program, attorney Michael Desi, who is representing her in her appellate matters. Michael, good morning to you. Thank you for coming on the program.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Julie.
Certainly. So let's start with what you call this smear campaign. Tell us, please, Michael, how do you know about this alleged campaign?
Sure. So what we have found out is that the prosecution's office had retained 2 PR firms to handle what they called managing the media and conveying messaging out to a national platform. We only found that out recently because we had sent requests to the county asking for documents surrounding the case and the prosecution, and one of those contracts was produced to us through that process. So we only have one of the contracts. There were 2 PR public relations firms that were retained by the prosecution. One of them was for a contract amount of $100,000. I don't yet have the amount for the second PR firm. But interestingly enough, on one of the PR firms, they actually openly discussed and disclosed the fact that they were retained within hours of the shooting. So, I find that both shocking and somewhat problematic in the sense that the court had issued 3 gag orders in this case that prohibited both parties, the prosecution and the defense, from providing any pretrial publicity out to the media, anything that could taint the potential jury pool. So, we didn't know that there was this type of coordinated effort to conduct what I'm calling a smear campaign to put out the prosecution's narratives out into the public. And they essentially did what they couldn't do directly because of the court orders. They did it indirectly by using these PR firms.
And would you go a little further, please, Michael? What specifically did these PR firms do?
So I can only tell you what these PR firms have disclosed that they did. But according to what they posted on their own websites, they essentially acted as a liaison between the prosecutor's office and larger national media outlets and other media talking heads and pundits, some of the talk shows and whatnot, that they believed were favorable to them. So they could pick and choose which media outlets they thought might be the best to push their narrative about the case. And of course, there was so much negative publicity about the Crumleys leading up to the trial. I mean, it would be impossible to say that this did not have some effect on the potential, the jury that was brought in ultimately to hear the case.
Michael, would you tell us more about what you say are secret deals with key witnesses?
Sure. So the prosecution at trial, they relied on 2 key school officials, and those school officials were the last individuals that had contact with the shooter and also with the Crumbley, the parents. What we didn't know is that when those school officials came into trial to testify earlier last year, they had cooperation agreements, essentially a form of use immunity agreements. And for your audience that may not know what that means, it's basically a cooperation agreement so that these witnesses said, hey, we'll come in and we'll cooperate with you and we'll talk and tell you what we know. And in return, you cannot charge us or say you take anything that we say if you were to charge us with a crime. Well, there's been lots of speculation and discussion about those school officials and whether they should have been charged for their acts and omissions arising out of the shooting. And so it should have been known to the jury. The jury should have known that those witnesses had these special agreements and that they were cooperating with the prosecution at the time that they testified, because those agreements gave them a bias and certainly a motive to testify against the Crumbleys in order to save themselves. So those agreements were required to be disclosed under Michigan law. And we only found out about those after the trial. So that is another basis for which we are asking the court to dismiss this case and throw these charges out, for the fact that the prosecution deliberately hid those agreements.
Understood. Michael, thank you for that explainer. I want to share with you and for all of our audience the statement that the prosecutor's office issued in response to the claims that you're making, saying, quote, The two stories defense counsel references came out after the jury verdicts, not before, and the suggestion that they had any impact on the jury is ridiculous. Jennifer Crumbley was convicted for what she did and didn't do, and the defense cannot change those facts, end quote. This was submitted by Chief Assistant Prosecutor David Williams. Michael Desi, your response to their response, please.
Yeah, that's just a form of gaslighting, because that's not true and it's not accurate. They retained those PR firms to push their narrative into the national media. They also invited two other journalists in behind the scenes with them to document their case preparations. Those two journalists may have released articles after, but it doesn't change the fact that they had retained the two PR firms that were working from within hours of the shooting all through the time of the trial to put out other narratives into the media, independent of those two journalists who were embedded behind the scenes, also unknown to us at the time, because they were making documentaries when they were told by the court that they could not communicate with the media. So there's a distinction between what the media, the PR companies did, and those journalists. But again, it would be hard to say that the public at large was not affected by the smear campaign that was run by the two PR firms.
Michael, before we have to let you go, I want to ask you, please, about January 31st, the next court day that your client, Jennifer Crumbley, is going to be present before the judge. What can we expect to happen on that date?
Well, it's hard to tell. There's a lot of issues before the court. The judge is going to decide whether to throw the case out, whether to grant a new trial, and also whether to release Ms. Crumbley while we pursue these appeal process if necessary.
Michael Desi, appreciate the conversation and appreciate you sharing your perspective with us. We'll continue the conversation and be following up on that court date on January 31st. Thank you kindly. Take good care.
Thank you.
When we come back, we're going to talk about why Donna Adelson is requesting a change of venue for her upcoming trial. And in our next hour, we're heading to Florida for the Forgetful grandmother trial of Tracey Nix. As you can see, this is a live look and testimony has resumed. This is the medical examiner on the stand, going to go through what she found at autopsy with baby Yuri. We'll be right back.
Tonight on Court TV.
I'm Vinny Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments. We have a big hour ahead here.
Your deplorable actions are unforgivable.
The community still doesn't know how this Boston police officer died.
He can't prove one element of his case.
It was a dramatic day, a dramatic moment inside the courtroom.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan. Tonight at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Now, for tipping the scales of justice, Mama Donna Adelson and her lawyers are asking for a change of venue because of her oldest son's deposition and the statements he made. And we talked Tuesday about that, Debo, here on Opening Statements. Rob Adelson, he's actually a doctor, Dr. Rob Adelson, I should say, made comments that could be considered damaging, very damaging to his mother's case. And now his mom's attorneys say they have no ability to unring the bell. Like when asked if his mother was sharp or gullible, Rob answered that Donna is not someone who's gullible or who could pull the wool over their eyes very easily. Rob's been estranged from the rest of the family since the murder of Dan Markell. We don't even have a photo of him, you guys, because he's not been talked about. Many people didn't even know there was another sibling. Well, Donna's trial is set to begin in June. And so we're wondering, will the information from Rob's deposition about his opinion of his mother not being gullible be enough to get a change of venue? Or is the defense reaching here? Well, let's bring in two great criminal defense attorneys, Noah Pines and Casey Early. All right, Noah, what do you think? Is this a reach or is this legit?
Well, I read the motion, and it sounds like the clerk didn't do their job.
Right.
Didn't seal what was supposed to be sealed. This case already does have a lot of media attention. It's not the first trial or the second trial, right? Or even the third trial. I think it's at least the fourth time.
We lost count, yeah.
Right. I mean, you had a trial, a mistrial, another trial.
Right.
And so I get it. And the defense attorney is being transparent. He's like, look, I was going to see how jury selection goes, but bring this up, and I need to bring it up now. So I think it's a valid motion based on what I read.
Appreciate it, Noah. I have something I want to show on the screen. This is from the hearing where Rob Adelson was deposed. And something said here that there's no person who places their own interests first or something like that, more so than Mama Donna Adelson. So this is another one of those pieces of the depo that the defense team is citing here. Casey, tell me, do you think that the whole jury pool is potentially tainted here in the Tallahassee area, and that this needs to be moved to get her a fair trial?
I don't think so. And here's why, because I always think about the change of venue. Clearly, if it's not the proper jurisdiction, you file a proper motion. But in this case, a change of venue, in other words, it's getting somewhat outdated. Because before, when the Supreme Court entered their opinion, the concern was that the community would be so hostile that there would not be a fair and impartial jury. But now with internet, social media, it's all over. And sometimes you may be in a different county, but you may still be a part or feel like you're a part of that community. I do not believe that, although the motion is valid, I don't think it's strong enough to change that venue, because the judge has to consider various factors, the cost, the inconvenience, and whether or not, even if you change that venue, will the defendant have a fair and impartial jury. So I do not believe that a change of venue would be appropriate in this instance, simply because it's not strong enough to bypass it.
Great points from you both, Casey and Noah. Thank you. I want to play a clip for you too. This is one of Mama Donna's jail calls, and she references all three of her kids. So you hear her talk about Rob. Listen to this call, and then I want to get both of your reactions on the other side.
I have one son that I don't speak with. I have one son who's close to being dead. And my daughter, whom I love, is doing this. I don't get it. I don't get it. I said to Harvey, I swear to God, our family was cursed. Absolutely cursed. And I don't know how to take care of it anymore. So.
All right, is the Adelson family cursed, or as my brother likes to say, does this family's problems bear their own fingerprints? You always say a lot of people's problems bear their own fingerprints. Noah, what'd you think listening to that?
Where's Dr. Sue? Bring her
Yeah,
back.
Dr. Sue Kornbluth.
Yeah,
I know, she's seeing a client right now. We got to call her.
I mean, I'm no professional, but you could see that Donna, is that typical mom who probably creates every single problem and then says, why does this happen to me? And I think that's been pretty evident through everything I've watched on this case.
Right. Casey, what did you think listening to Mama Donna?
I don't think she's cursed. I think she's reaping the harvest from the seeds that she's sown, being in control, having that dominant position. And now she's playing victim. This is definitely not a curse, because your hands are not clean. And I can't feel sorry, even based on trial number 1, 2, and 3. I just don't have sympathy, because it's obvious that she had involvement.
Casey, thank you. I think so many courties share those sentiments. Thank you for saying that. I know many people are feeling it. It's really hard to feel sorry for Donna Adelson. I mean, especially because throughout all these trials, as you noted, I'd have to really go back and think how many we've seen. Her name always was coming up, and so now it's like, we've arrived. We're finally at the trial. Okay, so quick predictions. We have just about 30 seconds left. Do you think the judge will grant the motion, Noah?
Not immediately. I think that they'll go through jury selection and then reconsider it during.
Ooh, okay. Well, that's interesting. All right. Casey, I think I know where you're going to go, but official prediction on our opening statements record here.
Motion denied, not sufficient.
Casey Early, Noah Pines, always a wonderful conversation with you both. Thank you for your legal expertise and your time. That is it for this episode of Opening Statements, my friends. You can watch it again if you want. Share it with your friends. Tell them about this show, Coffee in Court, every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. We put the shows up every day. Just go to your favorite website, courttv.com, click on the shows tab. When we come back, we're going to Florida together. We're getting ready for the homicide case for Grandma Tracey Nix. And as you can see, testimony is underway. We've got the medical examiner who conducted the autopsy on little baby Yuri. This is a hot car death case, and this is the second child that's died on the defendant's watch.